Real estate is no stranger to price moves, just like any other market. In the 2000s, we saw a major upswing in the prices of real estate, driven by subprime loans and the derivatives connected to them. This time around, subprime lending isn't in focus. There's another factor to keep your eyes on. You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. Today, we're going to look at real estate. I want to show you what's happening with the state of the economy. We're going to look at billionaires and those who own billions of dollars worth of real estate and show you what they're up to, what they are talking about, and of course connect that in with the financial system. So let's begin. I wanted to begin by taking a look at this. Chicago Fed economists see the U-Cov jobless rate as high as 34%. It's unbelievable, but let me explain what this is all about. The official U.S. unemployment rate for April, due out this Friday, will likely vastly understate job destruction. So, a pair of economists at the Fed, specifically the Fed Bank of Chicago, they set out to create a measure that captures the true extent of labor market losses. Wouldn't that be interesting to know the real unemployment rate? My goodness, why isn't this always available and the one that's promoted to individuals so they know the true state of the economy? Well, I've got a pretty good idea as to why they would rather report the U3 unemployment rate instead. The official unemployment rate may only capture a fraction of the losses. Many of those newly out of work will not be captured in the traditional U.S. unemployment measure, which counts only those who are out of a job and actively looking for work. Further down in the article, the Labor Department also publishes broader measures to include those working fewer hours than they want to and people who have looked for work in the past but not recently. But even such broader measures may miss those who are on unpaid leave and expect to return to their jobs once the crisis has passed, or people who are not searching for jobs because of stay-at-home orders, according to the Fed. So you can look up the U6 unemployment rate. As I said, I always note this because at least it's a broader measure of what's going on. It's not accurate, doesn't give you the accurate depiction of the actual unemployment rate, but it is provided by the BLS. It's a quote-unquote official statistic, but they're never going to tell you about it. This one, though, goes even further. So they talk more about this, and perhaps I could do an entire video just outlining this, explaining this. I know that there are others out there like Shadow Stats, which do recalculations of all of this type of data to provide you a more realistic look at all of it, but I'm just trying to give you all different sources, and it's interesting when it's coming from none other than the Fed. So I want to use that to move into this next part here, and we're going to be talking about what's happening with real estate. And so I wanted to start with this. A major uncertainty is whether mortgage forbearance policies will prevent a wave of distressed sales. More than 7% of mortgages were in forbearance in the week ended April 30th. Some homeowners can get that forbearance for up to a year. So just for those who don't know, essentially people don't have to pay, depending on where you are, for up to 1 year. But homeowners could struggle to make the payments after the forbearance period ends. In the next 12 months, it's hard to anticipate price declines because of the mortgage forbearance. You would have to see continued job losses for a prolonged period, leading to the foreclosures, and even then we may not have an oversupply. So have no fear, because the government is here. That's what they're trying to tell everybody. But the fact remains is that simply pushing that back further and further doesn't make it any easier on people in the grand scheme. If these individuals stop paying their landlords, the landlords can't last forever on that. Of course, everyone operates at thin margins, particularly those who use a lot of debt. There is going to be this wave of defaults that could easily come through, and that's going to put a very big downward pressure essentially on the lenders. And then we run into problems similar but not exactly the same from the housing crisis. This article out of Bloomberg is talking about Sam Zell, the billionaire known for buying up troubled real estate. He said the issue that we're dealing with today will leave the same kind of impact on the economy and society as what we saw 80 years ago. And it's funny because he's saying things that are exactly what I've been talking about. Quote, too many people are anticipating a kind of V-like recovery. We're all going to be permanently scarred by having lived through this. How soon will will anybody get on an airplane? How soon will anybody stay in a hotel? How soon will anybody go to the mall? The fact that these places may be open doesn't necessarily mean that they'll be doing business. This is exactly what I've said. So that's one person. That's Sam Zell. Of course, I already covered this in a previous video. Warren Buffett sitting on $137 billion of cash, and he doesn't see anything attractive right now. He also mentioned the Federal Reserve and what they did wasn't very wise. Didn't like what they did essentially, although he instantly backtracks on that and says that, well, they're doing good things, so don't worry about it. This is another one. Then we have Grant Cardone, who is also warning about the situation, saying you're going to have problems in the real estate market. And he's talking about bigger properties, not the average individual buying and selling their house. He's saying that the market is essentially frozen at his level, and the problems will extend out, most likely up until next year. And then we move into something else, and that's Airbnb. I've talked about this before, but they're in some serious trouble. The company's revenue would be halved, and that it would terminate about 1,900 of its 7,500 staff members, one of the largest layoffs in total that Silicon Valley has seen during 2020. Just remember that there are a lot of people out there who are relying on the income from the Airbnb rentals that they're providing. Nobody's staying in them. They're not making the money. They can't pay the bills. The longer this stretches out, the bigger of a problem it becomes, not just for the individuals, of course, but for the lenders too. People are so heavily in debt right now, and it's unimaginable that this could get worse, but of course, it does every single day. Consumer debt hit a fresh record high to start 2020, even as credit card balances declined. Now, the expectation here is that people were buying more of the essentials instead of necessarily going out and buying the latest trending thing. Instead of going to the restaurants, they were more in a survival mode. But essentially, it didn't really matter because the debt expanded regardless. And this is where it gets interesting. Worst property debt crash in years looms for workout specialists. Fitch says 26% of CMBS borrowers asked about payment relief. We're looking at the mortgage-backed securities, but specifically commercial real estate. Remember, it's not just the commercial real estate. What's connected in with that? We have to understand the derivatives. There's so many people out there who are always focused on the real estate itself. I always see that. If you go back a few videos, I did a special on Canadian real estate particularly, just to highlight the point of how this is all interconnected. And my subscribers watched it, a lot of positive comments, of course, but then it started to move on to other people out there, and the comments were laughable. I see them now every day they're coming in. So already my subscribers have seen that video. Now it's just random people. It's truly embarrassing what people believe. Things such as real estate never goes down in price. We will never see real estate decline. A whole bunch of just nonsense. I'm not going to waste any time. It's just ridiculous. You have to understand derivatives to know what happens in the markets. You don't need to be an expert at it. I certainly am not, but you got to know what they are and how they connect to the things that matter to you, whether that's real estate, stocks, and so on. Emptied out malls and hotels across the U.S. have triggered an unprecedented surge in requests for payment relief on commercial mortgage-backed securities. It's an early sign of a real estate crisis. Borrowers with mortgages representing about $150 billion in commercial mortgage-backed securities, accounting for 26% of the outstanding debt, have asked for suspending payments in recent weeks. So you got to know, it's not just the average person. They can't pay their rent right now. They're getting forbearance up to a year. This goes all the way up. It's bigger than that, okay? Following the last financial crisis, delinquencies and foreclosures on the debt peaked at 9% in July 2011. Special services firms assigned to handle the vulnerable CMBS loans are bracing for the worst crash of their careers. They're staffing up following years of downsizing to handle a wave of defaults, modification requests, and other workouts, including potential foreclosures. Of course, they're going to have problems. Look what's happening with retail right now. Look at all these different businesses that that no longer need the real estate they did before. BMO, the Bank of Montreal, big tower downtown Toronto, they're now saying we are not going to go back to the old way. We're going to be doing work from home on the regular. What does that mean? Less real estate is needed. The banks have already been doing that over the last few years. It's becoming increasingly common, but it's going to be even more common tomorrow as this really changes the way businesses do what they do. A surge in residential foreclosures helped ignite the last financial crisis. Now, commercial real estate is getting hit because of the economic shutdown has shuttered stores and put travel on ice. So this is important to understand. People are just looking at the home down their street, or maybe they go on Zillow and they find that their home is worth this much and it's so fantastic because we have quote unquote made this much money. Of course, you can use that HELOC to pull all the money out and buy yourself a new Maserati, but I digress. Not all of the borrowers who have requested forbearance will be delinquent or enter foreclosure, but Fitch estimates that the $584 billion industry could near the 2011 peak as soon as the third quarter of this year. Obviously, I'm going to be tracking this very carefully. That's all for this video. If you found it informative, hit that thumbs up button. When you do, you're supporting me. I want to thank you for doing that. It really means a lot. If you want to check me out on any of the other social media platforms, I got Twitter, I got Instagram. I'm posting every single day. Check me out on there at The Money GPS. If you want to learn about e-commerce for free, I've got an e-course that will teach you everything you need to know at the AmazonGPS.com. My two books are starting to make a heck of a lot of sense to a lot of people, and I want to thank those who have shared their insights of these books with myself and of course others through the comments, through the emails that I've received. Thank you very much. If you haven't read this book, if you haven't read it, definitely check them out. Link in the description. If you want the audiobook, themoneygps.com. This was the video I did about Canadian real estate. It was seemingly only a few days ago, and the views have been really, really high. If you want to check it out, click on it. I'll see you there.